Let's have a call to order, please.
Okay. Mike Davenport.
Here.
Sherelle Fuller.
Here.
Dan Nicholas.
Here.
Terry Pavasich.
Here.
Rick Pavanato.
Here.
Joanna Vasquez Drexler.
Here.
Zoe Boyd. Here. Sam Bull.
All right, sounds like we have a quorum. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Where did we move the flag to?
Where's the flag?
We don't have one. It was over there.
Let's all imagine the most wonderful flag, all right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And it looks like tonight we're starting with student perspectives, right? We have a group from South High.
Yep, we do.
Mr. Schwartz.
Good evening, everyone. We're excited. We have 3 freshmen here tonight who may be coming into the building as students for the first time tonight, and they certainly will be tomorrow and on Thursday. But they were involved in our freshman play, which they recorded virtually and is soon to be released. So we've asked them to come and share their experience of being involved in this way, especially in this strange situation, how it's helped them get acclimated to school and about their plans when they come back. So I'll let the girls introduce themselves.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Amelia Oscarup.
My name is Maya Flannery. I'm Gianna Caponegro.
I was involved in the freshman play because I've always loved singing and dancing, and I loved doing the freshman play because it was a great way to end my long school days after sitting on a Chromebook all day learning about new things, and making new friends has been the best part of it all, like them. And I also really enjoyed being able to meet new staff members with being a new freshman, not knowing anybody. It was a great way to start my new career at South. I'm also involved in the speech team now because of my director who encouraged me to continue.
Being in the freshman play was also pretty important to me because it was something that I could look forward to after a long day of Zoom. And I did make a bunch of new friends, like Amelia said, which was very nice because in my classes I could recognize more people, and it was just comforting to have familiar faces there. Obviously, this wasn't like the most ideal way that we could have been doing theater, but we did make it work. Besides tech issues, which did happen a lot, it was nice to feel like I was doing theater again, it was really a good feeling for me. And I hope that in the future I can be involved more at DGS when it's safer to be in person and meet more people and be part of the DGS community.
It was really important for me to be involved in the freshman play, especially for me since I'm a transfer student and I came here not knowing anyone. I've really gotten to know a lot of people, and a lot of people from the freshman play are actually in my classes, so it's nice to actually recognize people and make a bunch of new friends like Amelia and Maya. And I'm also involved in the speech team because of our director. He definitely was a huge impact in me getting involved in a lot of things, and I hope to get involved in more activities at DGS when it is safer.
Does anyone have any questions?
Tell us a little about the play.
Yeah.
So the play was called The Freshman Zoomies, and we had a lot of different scenes, from being to really young kids to being like really old grandparents, and that was really fun because you got to be multiple people, but yet you were like always the same person. It was fun to like recognize, like when you watch it, you'll be able to recognize us, but we're totally different, and different props and different tones of voices and accents.
It was really interesting trying to make different characters with the things that you had like at your house, because usually you'd have costumes from like a department, or you'd just bring things in and kind of be crazy and fun. But like each individual person had to bring in their own things. Well, not bring them in obviously, but from their own house they'd have to like wear things. So it was cool to see how each person interpreted their characters. And also, like the experience with like logging on to Zooms practically like every 15 minutes to go from different scenes was also pretty interesting, because you'd like have to change what you were doing from each Zoom, and you got to see different people each time.
We also had like different backdrops for each scene, so we got to really experiment because we could have like a super cool like backdrop for one of the scenes that you really wouldn't be able to do in person, and you could make it seem like you were like actually there. And also like that both of them said like we could experiment with like different costumes, and you could kind of like play around with it, like make it your own. And you could also, like, all the different characters, playing a bunch of different characters was really fun as well, and you could really see, like, everyone's personalities and all of that.
Even though this was a strange situation, do you all plan on continuing your careers in drama here at South?
I want to, yes. I also signed up for like different clubs, like the drama club and like the stage crew. So I want to be able to be more involved in the drama department.
I also want to be involved in the drama department at DGS. Even if it continues like this, it's better than nothing, considering that it's something that I love to do. So yes, definitely, I will continue.
I will as well, even though it may look different than it usually is. I think it's just a really great opportunity for all of us, and it's also a great new experience as well.
Well, I can hear the excitement in your voice about what you just went through, and want to congratulate you all for making the best of the situation at hand. So it's actually really encouraging to see that you did that. I mean, because you could easily have not done that, not joined up, sat at home and complained or whatever. But I congratulate you all for your participation and your excitement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. All right, and next item on the agenda is our student board member questions and comments. The opportunity to hear from both of you.
Is this working? Sounds like it's working. Should I go up there or just stay here?
Fine. Yeah,
Okay.
just right there. Yeah.
Okay, so for DGN, I think the general theme of the last 2 weeks has been sort of a mix between frustration with remote learning and excitement for entering the hybrid schedule. I think that there's definitely a lot of things that students are struggling with remotely that obviously have been outlined in previous board meetings and have been voiced by the community. But I think that frustration and those problems has kind of been overshadowed in the last week or so by that optimism and by that excitement to go back to school. And there's things like breakout rooms on Zoom, which can be a little awkward. There's things like not having that personal connection with your teacher or classmates that can get frustrating. But I think that with that added extra 2 half days that we're going to be having, it will definitely boost attitudes, and will definitely boost all the like teacher-student relationships and student-student relationships that we've been lacking in these first couple months. But I think that something in terms of issues that we've seen, I think that the freshmen would definitely top that list in terms of issues that have come up since school started, especially because they just feel almost like they're not part of the student body yet. And I've interviewed a couple freshmen with our school newspaper, and I can tell that the general sense is, I'm really excited for later, but I'm not excited now because student activities are all virtual, everything's remote. I feel like I can't talk to my teachers and my students, and I just don't feel like part of the DGN family. But I think that with that frustration that's come from the last 2 months with freshmen, it's even more optimism than the rest of the student body and more excitement, because they're so ready to meet people, they're so ready to meet teachers, they're so ready to join the rest of the student body. And that kind of segues into the other thing I was going to talk about, which is student activities, because while there have been student activities that have been in person, like sports and fall sports, and with everything that IHSA kind of reevaluated at the start of the year, so we have been doing sports in person, but there are other things that were once remote that are now turning back into in-person, such as homecoming, which is actually this week. It's pretty exciting, I think, because we've got dress-up days, which you wouldn't think would be that relevant over Zoom, but there's like Instagram accounts and social media accounts for student activities that are finding ways to have students like share the days that they're dressing up and share what they're wearing and kind of get involved with other students and teachers. And also there's events. So there's an ice cream social and a food drive on Tuesday. And Thursday is going to be a scavenger hunt. And Friday there's a drive-in movie. And then there's a virtual assembly on Saturday. So I think a lot of people are looking forward to that, because it's a little bit more of that interaction, a little bit more of that school spirit, a little bit more of that like in-person vibe that we haven't really been feeling in the last 2 months. And so I think that'll be a big boost, especially for our freshmen. And also for fine arts, the play Snoopy is actually having 7 outdoor performances this weekend between Thursday and Saturday, which is another example just of kind of that transition, that safe transition from virtual to in-person, and making the best of the situation. Obviously, we can't go back totally to normal, but I think that this example of theater performing outside in the Prince Street Plaza, the new Prince Street Plaza at North, is definitely an example of making the best of this situation and using the new master facility plan resources. And from a club standpoint, clubs can't meet in person, but every single club is meeting virtually. There have been no clubs that have been cut, so that's definitely a good thing to look at. I think that there's still obviously that frustration of not being able to do exactly what your club is for, especially for things like bass fishing, if it's all in person. But it's definitely, the tide is definitely turning from going from virtual to in person in terms of finding ways of kind of meeting in the middle. For example, bass fishing does have a tournament next weekend that they're entering in. And so obviously safety precautions and things won't be the same, but it's a step in the right direction. And then for sports, obviously those have been going on. This is nothing new, but cross country, girls and boys are actually top 5 in the state right now, varsity. So that is definitely something to be proud of for North. And a lot of other sports that aren't necessarily in season are practicing with contact days, such as football. And so it's definitely lively around the DGN campus right now. And so I think that through everything that's going on, the general mindset right now is optimism. I think that people are really, really excited to come back to school, and people are really, really excited to get involved with the student activities and the clubs and the sports and everything that DGN has to offer, even if it's not the same this year compared to other years. I think that everybody understands that the staff and the teachers are doing the best that they possibly can, and everybody's excited to kind of get more than what has been in the last couple months. So I think that the general vibe is definitely optimism. So, yeah, I mean, I think that right now at DGN, I think people are looking on the bright side, and I think people are really happy with what things are going to look like in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
So over here south, I can definitely speak to Sam's point about homecoming week being a good morale booster. We actually had ours last week, and there were a lot of fun activities organized by student activities, like Sam said, the virtual scavenger hunts and drive-in movies. And there were also like,
Yep.
Hello? Okay. It's
there you go.
working now. But yeah, we also did virtual messages of kindness, which went through on our emails, which I personally really enjoyed giving and receiving. And then we also had a virtual rally, which was really fun to watch. It was like about an hour long, and we got to see all of our our peers doing different performances in different groups like cheer and step team. And we also heard about like certain clubs and activities and what's going on with them. So like our sports team, some highlights. The boys golf team is now in the gold division for the West Suburban Conference. And the girls cross country, girls swim and dive, and girls tennis teams are so far undefeated in their season. So we're pretty proud of them. And then for the arts, as you guys saw, we had the freshman Zoomies, and they're pretty much finished up and they'll be released soon. And we also have the fall plays. They're pretty much almost done. There's the complete works of Shakespeare Abridged and A Midsummer Night's Dream. They'll both be showing pretty soon, I think by the end of the month. So if you want to tune in, you can see me as Helena being melodramatic for about a half an hour. But yeah, so those were some of, oh, and also in the music program, we haven't had any performances yet, but I have so far enjoyed it. I'm in choir, and I've enjoyed all of the new ways that we've found to produce music for our future performances. We've been trying to do it online, and it's a little tricky, but I think it's really cool that we can have like 50 plus kids recording and all coming together to make a final product. And I think the same goes for band and orchestra from what I've heard. But yeah, as far as the like overall vibe on our side of the tracks, I'd say it's similar to what Sam was mentioning. There's a lot of optimism for coming back to school. There's a bit of reluctancy too from some students that question the safety of coming back, or they question how different the curriculum and how different the execution of the curriculum will be in class when teachers have to plan for a half in person and for the students that are staying remote. So there's a bit of reluctancy, but also at the same time, I know a lot of students are happy to be coming back to school. That's about it.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Any questions for Sam or Zoe?
Good job.
Very informative. Thank you. So, climate survey, remote learning feedback.
All right, so a few informational items tonight. The first one is that on the climate survey, the remote learning, the regular surveys and feedbacks that we're receiving from students, staff, parents, a variety of staff groups. We've closed the first round of surveys. Remember, these will keep going all year long, and we're in the process of tabulating that data that came in. We're planning on, at the next board meeting, of having a presentation of that information for the board and the public. And then we're working on forming committees in the building to try to take that feedback and turn it into actionable items. So that's all going on related to that. So any questions? I mean, that's just a quick update as to our progress. Like I said, just a bunch of quick informational items tonight. The next item is school plan update. We remain in moderate in DuPage County, so that's where our metrics sit. Although last week all of the metrics were trending down, this week we have a few trending back up again. And in the past week we also published our own dashboard of just number of positive cases in the district. It's available on our 2021 page under resources. And you'll see every Monday we'll update this graphic. That's when the DuPage County metrics are updated, and we'll update ours at the same time as well. So what you can see here is last week we were across the entire district, cumulative through the school year, with 11 cases. We had 3 new cases last week, so cumulative through the whole school year, we're at 14 for students. And then for staff members, up until last week, we had no positive cases amongst the staff. Last week, we had 2 cases come in. So that's our total cases for the whole year up to this point. And I just want to, once again, we'll keep going back to this image and talking about how we're planning for moving forward. What I want to focus in on is what do these metrics mean for what we plan? And really for the plan that we've put forward, the area you're looking at is between high, moderate, and low substantial. So when in the county, we move between high, moderate, when we move from moderate to substantial, that is the spot where we start having conversations with the health department, with other school districts, with our partner school districts, to determine how quickly and how severely are we moving into substantial. You could equate this to when we start having conversations about snow days and do we cancel school and those kinds of things. So that is the point in the line where we start talking about, do we continue to allow students to come back to school? Don't we? For how long? So you could imagine if we moved into substantial and we moved into there because we were at 101 cases per 100,000, which is just over the threshold, right? And that was the only metric that put us there. That might not be enough for us to instantly say we should close down school. We talked to the health department at that point. We'd ask what we should do. It's likely with a single metric we would follow and see, does that trend turn around the next week? Is that just a blip, or do numbers continue to start trending the wrong direction? Are there other factors in place? Like, did it move to substantial because there was a large outbreak in a retirement community? Well, that's a different community than our school, so it might not require us to even be concerned because the health department believes it's going to turn around the next week. Or is it a quickly rising factor amongst students aged 15 to 19? Well, that might cause us to be a little more concerned. So we're going to look at all of these variables, including how fast is the rate of spread within our own schools. All of those things will factor together, and every Monday we get these numbers. If it started to look like we were trending the wrong way, we'd let the community know, hey, this week's numbers weren't really good. If they continue to go this way, we might have to look at returning to fully remote learning. Or if the health department says, whoa, all of a sudden everything got horribly bad very quickly and we're recommending that schools across the county pull back a little bit, then we would follow that guidance and do that. So I just wanted to kind of, we've been building on this meeting after meeting and kind of wanted to get into the conversations we're having now are, okay, now we know the metrics, we know what they look like. What is the point when it doesn't make sense to continue to come for in-person learning? And I just want everybody to know it's not like a hard and fast number. These are all metrics and indicators that tell us what kinds of conversations should we be having with the health experts, what kind of information should we be providing our community to set them up for whatever comes next. Mm-hmm. And if we move to fully remote learning because the metrics get worse, then we'll start having the same conversations about, are the metrics trending the right way to allow us to return back to in-person learning. So this is, as we head into cold and flu season and everything else here, as we move more indoors, it'll be more likely that we're having these kinds of conversations. But hopefully, everybody in the DuPage area continues to follow those safety guidelines of keeping your distance, wearing your mask, washing your hands, doing those things, and that our numbers don't go in the wrong direction, and we're able to just keep moving forward from here on. So any questions on kind of how that breakdown works?
Hey, I just have a real quick question. Basically on the slide before that had the 14 and the 2.
This one here?
Yeah, that one. Let's just go with the students. Those 11, that was last week. Are they going to be tested again at the end of this week, and then that number will drop off?
No, this is just a running total since day one.
So it'll be
So next year it'll be, or next week it'll be hopefully just 14, right? And we don't get any new cases, but if we get any new cases this week, that number will continue to grow through the entire school year.
But that's not always an accurate number for the number of students, let's say, that are currently having an issue with the virus. I mean, don't we want to know currently what our number is?
That's why you have last week to this week. So where is the number trending? Is it growing quickly or slowly? from
Yeah,
one
but
week
those
to the
people still stay in those numbers.
Yeah, right, but you're looking at
But
the change
I
from
guess
week to
I'm
week.
looking at it, do you understand what I'm
I
saying?
do, but let me, so one of the, so both of my kids' colleges give me a little thing like this as well. Well, kind of, here's where we're at. They also list, though, how many recovered.
Yes.
Is that something maybe we could add that would let people know, hey, because, I mean, let's say we get to a point 3 months from now and the number is still 14.2. It'd be nice to know that all 14 have recovered and that there's actually nothing active going on.
Right. I think that's what I'm trying to say is that those 11 students that were last week are, I'm going to say, are recovering, and that pretty soon they'll be testing negative
Yeah, but that's,
for the virus. And then, to me, it doesn't make sense to keep adding more people onto that number when in fact they're not really in that number anymore. Do you understand what I'm
no, I
trying to
understand
say?
what you're saying. We'll go back and rediscuss it with our team. This is
Yeah.
the way right now with how low the numbers are,
Sure.
that we felt was an accurate reflection of, this is what people were asking us for in the community as we start to re-enter school for in-person learning, was how broad was, how widespread has COVID been in our community since the start of the school year? And I mean, this is what parents and staff members have been asking for, so this is kind of why we've provided it this way. But we'll reevaluate if it's the right
But
way
I
to
guess
do
I'm
it moving
thinking that
forward.
it's not an accurate number.
It is an accurate number of the total number of cases since the start of the school year, which is what
And
people have been asking for.
That can be a number, but I'm also wanting to know how many are currently fighting the virus.
Well, you could assume
what
that the week before it was 9, it's 11, it's a 2-week duration for most people. So
it's not
you're
always.
looking at 5. Would be if you're looking for that number right now where we're at, it's
Yeah.
probably 5 students in total.
Right.
That are, and 2 staff members.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're asking for. What we're representing now is,
Yeah.
I mean, what you're bringing up now hasn't been asked for yet by the community. What people have been asking for is as they're looking to return to in-person learning, this is the kind of data that's been repeatedly asked for by both staff and families. So that's why it's reflected the way it is. But you're right, long-term, the number of active cases would probably give you a better idea of how big the outbreak currently is.
Right.
But since there's been this long duration of time where people have been away from school, what people are really trying to gauge is, has there been a huge outbreak amongst everybody while they've been away or not? So that's why it's reflected the way it is right now. But I get what you're asking for. This is why it's reflected the way it is now, is because this is the question that's been asked that we're trying to answer.
The other suggestion I might make is that instead of it just saying last week, this week, it might say cumulative last week, cumulative this week, because people that just like,
It says it.
I know it says, I'm saying a lot of people, they look at things and don't read everything.
Just glance
I'm just,
at it.
Yeah, I just.
All right, I'll take it back to the team and we'll talk through it.
If you would.
Yep.
And then the recovered idea I'd like to have you talk about that too.
Yeah, it's also, I will say, at this point, we are being very, we're grouping the numbers together like this because it is also so few.
Yes.
That we also don't want it to be easy to identify who we're talking about at this point. So, the more we disaggregate the data out at this point, because the numbers are very small, all right? And the more we disaggregate the numbers out, the easier it gets to isolate, oh, that's the kid that was in my class that would, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we've intentionally kept them aggregated at this point. If the numbers start to grow, then it makes sense to maybe break them out, because then it's harder to identify who the individual is. But I'm really concerned about disaggregating by school or getting them down into smaller numbers where it would be easier to pick out the person we're talking about. So this gives, the set of data that we've really most commonly been asked for right now. And we'll continue to evaluate if that's the right data set moving
So Hank, these numbers here, are these numbers involved in the discussions with the health department on shifting our strategy back to school, both either going to remote, and we haven't talked about actually more school yet. I mean, that may be premature and that may not be till next semester, but hopefully we stay low. And if those numbers stay low with our students, that should be a big number, more so than any of those other metrics about what we decide to do in our own district. So if those numbers tend to stay at 1 or 2 a week for the next 8 to 10 weeks as we go into next semester, that tells me something about how often or how much our kids should be in school. So I wonder how much we're using that.
Yeah, it's a combination of, and we had that conversation today with the DuPage County Health Department, and they warned us, you got to balance both, right?
Obviously.
You know, because the community transmission rate gives you an indicator of how effective your safety measures will be, and people are part of a larger community. They're not just here at school, you know. So but both are data points that we would use in that larger conversation when we hit that point and we're having conversations about, are we moving in the direction of minimal within our school community rather than the larger?
But when I agree, but I notice when we look at the metrics from the health department, our micro number of students isn't included in the health department number.
In the macro number, yes.
In the and those to me are just as important as the other numbers we're looking at. That's important.
Yeah. I will tell you that the health department doesn't believe that they are equally equally as important. That they are both important, but the community spread is maybe at a higher tier of importance to your local, in your school district.
I think the bigger thing to focus in on here, agreeing with what Dan's saying, is that it's a factor. It is a factor.
It's absolutely.
And it's a factor that we can actually control as a community, as a school community, right? And it gives our staff, our parents, our teachers, our students all some incentive, I think, hey, listen, if we do what we're supposed to do and do it well, we can actually have some say in the overall outcome in terms of how much we get to be in school and that we get to continue being in school, like you said, in terms of if we're on one side of the line or the other. This is something that could help be instructive and will be. Maybe not weighted as heavy, but it'll.
The larger community impacts the variables the most, right? And it's not just the kids attending school, it's the parents at home, it's the grandparents, it's people going to the store. Anything anybody in our community can do to keep those numbers going in the right direction will keep our kids in school longer and will provide us more opportunities to get school going for even a longer period of time with students here. That's variable number one. And then variable number two is in our small school communities, what's going on. And both could factor in, right? If we look like we're doing better than the larger community, well, that kind of lends some credence to kids are safer at school. If we're outpacing the larger community, well, that says something wrong is happening amongst our student body and we got to make some corrections, right? So both are important factors.
I'm glad we have these numbers, because to your point, that helps us, again, not perfect, but it helps us gauge how well our safety measures are working in school. And if we're going exactly as the community's going, I would anticipate hopefully that we're actually better. And if we're not, then that's probably something we need to take a step back. But on the flip side, and I don't know the numbers, obviously, but if in 8 weeks from now we're at 20 and we've only grown 5 or 6 in 8 weeks of being back at school, it's going to be really hard pressed to tell the students they can only go 2 half days a week if our student community has shown that they can responsibly, and effectively protect themselves. So
we'll keep having, we meet with the health department 2 to 3 times a week and have those kinds of conversations.
Well, I like the idea of being able to take some ownership of the outcome, because so much of what's happened in this pandemic, we've felt like it's out of our control, right? But this is something that we can do something about. And so, anyhow, goals.
All right, so as you heard from our student representatives, and we discussed last time, this is kind of the 3-week look ahead. So 9th graders coming back tomorrow. Every 9th grader that wishes to return for in-person learning will be able to come back for 2 half days this week. Next week, we have that crazy schedule with Monday a planning day, Tuesday a class day, Wednesday SAT testing for seniors, which is a required state test for their graduation requirement. Then Thursday is another learning day, Friday is parent-teacher conferences, so that week's all messed up. We will have, the idea is that students will learn on Monday, they'll get some activities to work on, they'll have their classes, half their classes on Tuesday, they'll get activities to work on Wednesday. We'll probably not give a ton of work to seniors who will have to be here taking an SAT for the most of the day on that day, and then Thursday we finish out the rest of the classes that week. And then the week after that, we start following that new modified hybrid schedule where all students come in that are selected in-person learning, which is 73% of our students. And they'll come in 2 separate groups, each for 2 half days.
Can I ask about SAT? How are the kids going to be dispersed in this? Where will they be taking the SAT? And how will that distancing be maintained?
So we have about 500 students coming in at both schools, a little more than that at
Almost
South.
700 at South.
700 at South, 500 at North. They're broken up into, most of them in classrooms. And Gina, you said the average is about 13 people per classroom?
Yeah, it's 13 to 14 a classroom. I believe we have about 51 classrooms at North and maybe 58-ish at South. So definitely social distancing, definitely abiding by all the protocol.
And then are they all coming in at the same time, or how?
Well, they arrive like students do on any school day. So, you know, those that are taking their own transportation, walking, they all, you know, they arrive over about a 30-minute window of time and go to their classrooms.
So will they be receiving some sort of instruction on how that day is going to work?
Yeah, they've already received that information.
I don't think they've received it yet.
So they just received
I haven't
information
seen it,
about
but
the test. They have not received specifics about what to, you know, like the face mask, the shield.
And timing or
alcohol,
classroom.
The timing, all that will be given out, as well as what room to report to.
Okay, so that's still coming.
That comes usually the 1 or 2 nights before, 1 or 2 days before.
What do
They
we?
should know that they're coming in that day for a test.
Yeah, they know that it's SAT, but I don't think they know timing.
Yeah, the
time of
specifics.
test and things
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
What, are all students coming in, even those students that elected remote learning?
Yes. They are required to come in to take that test to have the graduation requirement met.
Okay.
Yep. The state and the federal government have not, well, it starts at the federal level, has not removed that requirement, nor has the state.
Which is, you know, for seniors, it's a great opportunity to take the test if you need it, but many seniors like mine and several of his
Right.
friends have all been accepted to their schools and decided where they're going already, so.
Yep, it's something that's totally out of our control.
I know.
Yep.
Timing is interesting.
All right, so we're in this October 5th week. You know, that's the schedule as we go through. So next week is that parent-teacher conference testing week. Then we go through 2 weeks of the hybrid. Then we have election week. Tuesday's no school, so that week will be jumbled in how it works. We're still figuring out, you know, what schedules will happen on which day. But that also gives us a week to make changes and adjustments in anything, you know, and over those couple of weeks, District 58 will be slowly ramping up their attendance days. So this really could have ramifications as in transportation and how bell schedules fold together. And we really want that week in case anything goes wrong with transportation times and getting kids to school and all of that, in case either district needs to make adjustments in their bell schedules to accommodate transportation. Not only do you have 2 school districts with different schedules, you have the new safety procedures as students board the buses, but you also have the sanitation of the buses between each bus run. All of those are variables that we have no idea how it will impact the length or timing of bus arrival and dismissal. So it was important to build in that week. It already was going to have a weird schedule to it, but to build in that week so that we could adapt, make changes, communicate everything out, if there are adjustments that need to be made before we go through week 1 and 2. Then you have a Thanksgiving week, which is only 2 days anyway, and then week 1 and 2. And then we wanted to remember that last week, give teachers as many minutes as possible, and the most minutes possible are in the remote learning model before we head into winter break and the end of the semester. All right, so any other questions that we haven't gotten to at this point?
The only other question I have is on the last week, have we made a decision on finals? Is that going to be up to the teacher, or what's going on with finals this week here?
Yeah, we will talk through that more with the course. That's where it usually happens, is the course team level. We've already said, like, any final that has been given in the past doesn't translate to this year, obviously, because, you know, it's this year, it's 2020. So, but those kinds of decisions are usually made at the course team level. All right, any others? All right. Our next agenda item. Hey, going back to something from the summer, typically we go through district goals in June, and then in July we build out the next year's goals, and then by now we'd be getting ready to give you a mid-year goal update, really because of where we are at. We have not started any long-range goal planning like we typically would in the summer months, right? All of our time has been spent on trying to get school back, and we have a lot of yearly and long-term goals that come back every year, and you've seen the budget process, you've seen curricular processes, you know we have professional development and our equity work going on, so all of those things continue, but what we want to do is get back into what does second semester goals look like. Obviously, you know, as Dan mentioned earlier, it'll be looking at revising, expanding in-person learning, assuming that everything goes well, but what our other long-term goals are as we come back. So this is just a heads up to board members to please go back to that document, take a look. If there's something that stands out that you would like for me to discuss with the administrative team as we sit down and do goal planning, shoot me a note or set up a time for us to talk, and happy to talk through those and take your insights back to the planning with the administrative team.
Anybody have anything? So I have several, but
yeah, just reach out.
I'll send you notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. This one I will turn over to Mark.
Okay, I've got a few info items for you. The first one is consideration of the district adopting a 457B plan, which is, if you're familiar with the 403B plan, which is, these are IRS codes that they allow investments to be made for post-employment purposes. And we're getting more requests from individuals who've come from other districts where they've had 457 plans, or our own employees have been with us for a while that want to look for different options. They're very similar and they run together, so you can, the current limit is $19,000 maximum that you can put in a 403B plan, and if you're over age 50, you can go up to $26,000. That contribution level is the same for a 457 plan, so an employee, if they desire, they could contribute $19,000 to both plans over the year. You can use them together. One big advantage, really, of the 457 plan is that if you make a withdrawal before age 59 and a half, or before you reach the period of time that you can do it, it's just a tax rate. There's no penalty. But the 403B plan does have a penalty. If you need it for hardship or need it for something, you can possibly get a pass on that. But typically it's a 10% penalty to take money out before age 59 and a half. And so that's why some people are learning about it, and it's an extra, another safety net for them. We would recommend using Omni. That's who we use for our 403B plan. We're very pleased with them. They do a pretty much a whole umbrella operational approach to the 403B plan. They would do the same thing with the 457 plan. It involves us, the administration have to sign a contract with Omni for the oversight. And there's another company called Aspire who would really actually handle the enrollments and the transactions related to the investments for the employees. And then a third party called Matrix, which is really the custody or custodian of the funds. So there's a good separation of power and control. And good thing for employees is that there's no fee for them, there's no fee to the district. When they make an investment, there's a charge that the Aspire and Omni would make, but the investing company, would pay that. So it's a good benefit that really doesn't have much impact on the district in terms of cost, and it's a good positive that we can give our employees. So I would be recommending at the October 19th board meeting, if we could, you would authorize the administration to enter those agreements with those companies so that we could offer this plan to our employees.
Questions?
Sure.
I have a question. I was trying to be sure I understood that an employee could participate in both?
Yes, you can put them together. It's not either or. You can be part of both.
Okay. And then also, I noticed 72 on the 403 before you can, age 72?
It's actually, I think it's 59 and a half where if you take it out before 59 and a half, I think.
Okay.
I think that's true. I think.
Yeah, my
It says
question,
72 is
72.
wrong.
the 72 in the memo, I didn't think it was at 72 years old.
Right, it's not. It's 59 and a half. 72 is,
I was thinking I would want the other.
I was going to ask the same question, Sherelle. I was like,
a lot of people won't get the money if you have to wait till it's 72.
no, I
Mark's
thought it
got
was
a few
50
You're
numbers
correct.
around
It's
his head.
59 and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
That must have been a
But for
typo
the
in the memo.
457, you're saying they wouldn't even take a penalty at 59 and a half?
They would not have to pay a 10% penalty if they
10%.
withdraw before that. No, that's
Okay.
a positive. That's a change.
Okay.
there's no penalty
I
at all. then, so
apologize
they
for
could
that.
withdraw at 44 and no penalty.
I'm sorry?
There's no penalty with the other plan then, correct?
Correct, the 457 plan. But 403B plan, it is a 10% penalty if you take it out before age 59 and a half.
But the other plan, they could take it out at 45 years old, no penalty.
Right.
That's a nice perk.
Just, they would still have to pay taxes on it. It would be
Right.
taxable.
We always do.
It's not a raw.
But it has no penalty. So that's one of the benefits of the 457 that is important.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Why now? Why weren't we doing this before?
We're starting to get more questions, and more districts around us are doing it. Honestly, until 2 years ago, nobody's even requested it, but then all of a sudden, we've started to get some requests and said, yeah, we can do that. I mean, there's a little bit of setting it up, but, and monitoring it a little bit, but there was not a lot of interest in it.
Okay.
Is that like a new plan? Is that something that
No,
has
it's
been
been
around?
it's been around quite a while,
Okay.
probably 20, 30 years, actually.
Oh, wow.
There's something, initially, 457 plans, they did change the law, though. 457 plans, when we had them, let's say your employees altogether had $200,000 worth of contributions that they contributed to the 457 plan. The way that the original code was written, we would have to keep a record of that on our books, and that would become an asset on our books, and we would have custodianship of it. We had to be a custodian of the assets for that to happen. And that got to be too cumbersome, and so that law changed, and since that happened, more and more districts are picking up on it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second item is securing student transportation, and this is something that at the end of last year, it was not clear whether we were going to be coming back to in-person education or not. And the big concern was how are we going to keep these bus drivers together? There was a large group that would go right to unemployment. They were furloughed by some companies. They were furloughed per student. Furloughed is a little bit different than unemployment in that they still got some benefits from the employer, but they didn't have salary. And then there was some federal money that came on top of that. So a lot of the bus drivers are making more money on furlough unemployment than they were getting, having when they got paid. But So that's a good thing. They could get called back and they didn't find another job somewhere else. Well, this year, we started the year with remote, and it's a year later, and some were getting older, and so we're really concerned about being sure that we have a base of drivers and with first student that can handle all 3 districts together. And altogether, we have about 92 routes. We're trying to trim them down, but that means, and I think it's somewhere in the area of 75 to 80 drivers, depending on some of the tiering that we do. And so we're very concerned about that. And it's not a local problem, it's a state problem, it's a national problem. And the State Board of Education put out a memo indicating that they would allow payments for terminal staff, for key terminal staff, and for drivers who were furloughed or who were not being called to drive buses, that they would allow that to be included with the chargeable or the claimable expenses that districts turn in to get transportation aid. Now, all things considered, really that's not a lot for us, because it doesn't matter what we spend on transportation for busing. We only get $16 a kid a year out of state support for that. So it doesn't affect us that way, but it does competitively affect us. If we don't chip in on the drivers, we are very concerned that we would not get the drivers when everybody starts coming back, and that we wouldn't get first shot. And so we had a long meeting with First Student, and their part of the deal is they would show us that they have proof of the drivers that we need to get the routes running when we're going full steam, and that we would contribute at the same level that other districts who might get more money back from the state than we would. So it's really trying to do everything we can, really, to make sure that we have drivers for the buses. And it's still an unknown, because they have a lot of drivers that right now are saying, yes, I will drive. And then when they get really down to it, they may not. Some are older and concerned of the COVID themselves. Some are just able to find something better in some areas, maybe, but or just go stay on unemployment. There's different options that these guys have, and it's very difficult to get drivers. It's been very difficult the last few years when the economy was going up and was running so high that a lot of these jobs were paying $19, $20 an hour, where several years ago they were $15, $16 an hour. So what we would do, and all 3 of the districts work together with First Student. We wanted to make sure we're together. In fact, we waited and we found out where every First Student district is in the northern region, to make sure all those districts that we're all getting the same deal, and that we're not, we're paying 40, someone's paying 32. We wanted to make sure everybody had the right deal for it, and that we could verify it. So we'll have their payroll list to prove that they have these drivers, at least that I want to make sure that 58 and 68 aren't paying for the same drivers we are, at least the same, that we're co-sharing that cost for all of them. So this is what, there's an attachment that we'll have for you. It's a document. Let me get to the right item here. A continuation agreement with them, so that and hopefully it won't last too long. If we can get back into doing in person, we all want that. Everybody wants that. We hope that we'll be able to have all the drivers needed when we have the kids ready to board those buses. And some families have changed their mode. I think some families may not want to be on a bus for a while still, even if we start it back up. But we still will run the same number of routes. At least we're trying to keep it geared up as if we get 100% of those riders that we normally have riding the bus. And that's about as good as we can do, because we don't want not getting to school on the bus to be an issue.
Questions?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Some question?
Is there an end date? Or will this go on to...
It's for the school year. It's for 174 school days, and what our normal ridership would have been for them.
And is there any, if they say they have the drivers and then it's implemented and then all of a sudden they don't, do we have any recourse?
Well, we possibly would have fraud if they were giving us false information and saying that that's what they were were doing. I believe they're going to try as hard as possible to get the drivers, and, you know, they don't want the problems either.
I guess you'd be saying because we've asked them to submit proof somehow, right? So if it turns out they don't, then that means either they really don't, or
They're a large international company. It's like, you know, it's not a small operation where they would be more tempted to do that. I think they'd be happy just to be able to stay alive and to keep paying the drivers that they do have on staff amounts that we are proposing. So there's a lot of schools involved with First Student, and it would be quite a scandal if they were doing that.
So when I read your memo, essentially fair to say that when you use the term we or us, we're talking about 99, but maybe we're also talking about 58 and
58 and 68,
too,
all
right?
three of us. In fact, we 58 and 68 both used Francis Sullivan, and so we had them develop this document for us. And actually, I think 58 is using the same document.
Okay. And they'll be...
So they're all taking action this month.
They'll all be...
Everybody's on board.
So it's not just us.
Yeah. If we hear differently, if they don't, then that messes up everything for us too. If one of them decides that our board's not going to follow it, then it'll be that person's out, and you've got to get the other two that have to pick up the total cost for everybody. So,
How does everybody feel about this? Yes?
Well, it'll come, this is time for question and comes for action then at the next board meeting.
Yeah, if you have other questions, go ahead and send them to me, and I'll try and respond before the meeting and get you any information.
So the other boards are workshopping this too then?
No, I'm not sure what their actions are, but it's up for action at all, my understanding, at all three boards this month.
Okay.
Yeah, and absolutely, we would bring this to the October 19th meeting for approval. Okay, next item is one I'm very pleased to see how the way it came out. The economy, as you might imagine, is, and especially in interest rates, is really down. It's kind of very volatile. We decided to try and get these bonds out before the election, because the election only makes things more volatile. This week, things went even, the market dove pretty good when they heard President Trump had caught COVID, and it's bounced back a little bit, so it's just been very volatile. So we were very concerned about getting a good rate and finding someone who would even invest and buy these before the election with the way the economy was. But we were very happy. You remember the original parameters resolution that we passed at the last board meeting, that was passed at the last board meeting, had the terms were 5% up to 5% interest, which we didn't expect that to happen, but we strongly expected it to be below 2%, like 1.7, 1.8, the total in cost for issuing the bonds. And we were able to get them, we put it out to 13 different possible investors, banks, school township treasurers, which in Cook County keep the money for up to 10 or 13 school districts, and they invest them for them, and so they're sophisticated enough to know that this is a good, solid investment. And it ended up being a Niles Township School trustees of schools, the treasurer, that did bid 1.15% on all of the bonds. And that and when you include the cost of issuance, which were about $70,000, the total cost of the bonds, all in cost, was 1.27. So we're really happy that we got it at a nice low price. The fact that these were taxable bonds made them even a little, harder for banks to buy, because then they have to pay taxes on it. So it was harder for them to compete this time. But we're very, very pleased. We awarded it to the trustees of schools for Niles Township. I'm going to get a little formal for you so you make sure that all the points are covered. $10.3 million taxable bonds. President Nancy Kupka and myself signed the agreement, and because all the parameters were met that were in the original resolution. Interest rates of 1.15%, total cost of 1.27% in terms of the issue costs and total cost of the bonds. We used Raymond James and Associates to help the placement. And they helped us because they actually found more potential buyers, which helped the bid process. Bond registrar and paging agent will be Amalgamated Bank in Chicago, which is one that we've used for other bonds and are very satisfied with their services. It's like $750 to handle it. The bonds will be dated October 2nd, 2020. That's when we closed the deal last Friday. And they're going to be payable on December 15th of every year through 1928. The reason we did 10.3 million, because I want to make sure everybody understands that part of it, is that we had, with a June due date each year, which we will have going after this year, we want to have money to pay the interest before we can issue taxes for it. We couldn't access a levy that we would have money back in time to pay a June, or just, in fact, this case, the first one, December due date. So we get money when we issue the bonds. It's part of the total cost of the bonds, but we're going to pay it out in interest before the first levy starts coming in for us. And after that, it'll be the levy that supports us. So when you issue bonds in the middle of the year, we end up having this issue. We issued some in January before, February, and we have this where we have to actually get more money from the bond purchasers to use to pay their own interest back. But it's so you can get into that whole tax levy routine. So 142,000 of the extra $300,000, which is $10,300,000. 142,000 of that was for interest that we'll be paying before we get taxes. It was actually $72,000 in cost of issuance, and so the net amount going into the working cash fund is actually $10,085,000, 248. So the $85,248, we didn't know how much interest we were going to have to pay, and so that's why we moved it up to 10.3, so we knew we would have enough coverage if the interest rates came in higher than 1.15. So we'll have that, and so our working cash fund will actually be $10,085,000. And then it'll start earning interest, hopefully, and provide for us some very important safety net over the next few years, because we do have $1 million in the budget for this year as a deficit, in our operating funds, $2 million and $3 million for the next 2 years. So we hope to make some changes, or we can look at changes to try and mitigate those, but this gives us a safety net if we can. And with the uncertainty of the way of delivering education, I mean, this is very expensive to do what we're doing with the hybrid. We're actually going to be using more buses because we're going to put fewer kids on each bus. We're going to have a lot of costs that can become heavy costs. And so it's not cheaper to do this, and I don't want us to be on this any longer either. So, looking at just the financial aspect, but we all are working for us to get to the in-person learning. So that's it. Those are the key points. It's all the parameters were met from the resolution, and we've executed and closed the bond.
It's solid work. Thank you,
We're really
Mark.
pleased, yeah.
Solid work, and this was absolutely the right thing to do, and we're privileged to be able to do it. And part of that's, big part of that's also due to your hard work in past years in setting us up.
There's a lady out there who works with Stephen Cutler and Angelia Vij. She was here tonight just to be
well, we heard
on tap in case anything happened.
Yeah, we heard some concerns previous, I think misleading and trying to cast some doubt on the process, but this is all handled the correct way, the transparent way, and this was completely within our rights to do and is the right thing to do for our community. So,
thank you.
And 1.15% is a real win.
Yeah.
So, any other comments?
No.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda, Gina's going to lead this short presentation on what we've done related to the Title IX changes that went into place in August at the federal level.
Thank you.
So you may recall last month approving 2 new board policies, well, 1 new one revised one. The new one, 2265, covers Title IX and the changes, and then the modified policy was 2260, which is the uniform grievance policy. And just as a reminder, Title IX comes out of the Education Amendments of 1972, and you can certainly read that, but just to kind of talk about what it prohibits discrimination based on gender, sex. It prohibits harassment, sexual harassment. It really is about making sure the students are not denied, and this applies to both staff and students, to full participation in our school and in school-related activities. So we take this very seriously, obviously, in District 99, and much of this appears on our website, but just as a quick reminder before I talk about the changes, it also applies to things like employment and athletics. It certainly guards against retaliation, so if a student was to file a complaint or a complaint was lodged against a staff member, retaliation is certainly not allowed, it is prohibited. So we comply with Title IX concerning our programming and our activities in all areas. So the changes have been huge. Very different definition that I'll talk about in just a minute. Some very specific prescribed roles, required training. Collectively, we spent over 150 hours of administrators being trained. There's other changes as well. The new policy that you saw last month, the revised 2260, there are several other policies that changes are recommended for, and there are requirements in terms of our website and what our website might or has to include. And I don't know if you've noticed, but it looks completely different than it used to in this area about Title IX. So the change in the definition is really key here. The old definition was unwelcome conduct that was basically severe and pervasive or persistent that interfered or limited students' ability to participate. The definition now is that it has to be so severe, so pervasive, and objectively offensive that it denies a person's equal participation. So it's a very key change in the definition. So what that means for us, our responsibility, is that when we receive a formal complaint, there are very strict protocols and procedures that we must follow. In addition, if we have knowledge of any kind of sexual harassment in a program or activity, we are required to respond, and that response must be quick, it must be prompt, and it has to be in a manner that is not considered deliberately indifferent. So the new roles, okay, sorry, couple more maybe. Okay, so the new roles, so Title IX coordinator has been a role that we have been accustomed to for a long while. That role is completely different now. In the past, both Scott Ugazer and I were Title IX coordinators. At this point, I am the Title IX coordinator. Scott is still a non-discrimination coordinator, but that Title IX coordinator role is mine exclusively now. However, in the new legislation, it can be delegated. There's an investigative role, so investigator, decision maker, appellate decision maker, and there's an informal resolution facilitator. So there's very specific roles, and each role requires very specific training. That required training, at the beginning of the year, every year, you may recall that we have a training for all of our staff, all of our teachers, all of our staff, and that training occurs on those August Institute days, and obviously we did that. And that's not new. But the required training for each of those roles is very different and is new. And anyone who serves or could serve in any one of those roles has to be trained. So for example, the basic training, which is the initial training, pretty much anyone that's going to serve in one of those roles has to do is a 3-hour training. We train 28 people to ensure that everyone is up to speed, to ensure that basically we're cross-trained to make sure that we can hand it off to whoever needs to be involved. In total, for example, in the basic training was 28 people that participated in some way. Some of the groups were smaller, but we basically have ensured that we have many people that can serve each one of those roles as needed. So we have the new policy that I mentioned, 2265. That is the Title IX policy now. It only refers to Title IX. 2260 is the uniform grievance procedure, and that would be for anything really that isn't Title IX. And then there are a series of policies that press has recommended changes for that relate to parts of Title IX as well. So there's 6 other policies coming forward with recommended changes as a result of these changes in Title IX. Our website, as I mentioned, has been completely revised. The Title IX coordinator name and contact information, that's been on there for a long while. However, the information on how to file a complaint has changed. All the policy listings has changed. All our training, if you go to that site, you'll see every training, the PowerPoints for every training that we did, a total of about 10 hours for many of us, and any of the related policies as well. So as we worked through all of the training, we have certainly, I think, done a great job of ensuring that when and if we get complaints, or when and if we discover a situation that, if true, could be Title IX, we are ready to respond appropriately.
Board members, you're not off the hook either. At some point in the next few months, there will be a board-related Title IX training, so we're trying to work out at which board workshop that will occur as well. So working with Nancy to determine when the board's attorneys will come in and provide a training for you as well. Before you get to your questions, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the amount of work that Gina has put in to organizing all of these trainings, understanding it, to really lead the district. We have heard repeatedly from the board's attorneys that we are way far ahead of many other school districts around the country in our work in this area, and have continued to be for the last several years. And that's really due to Gina's work and dedication in this area. So we should make sure that that's pointed out. And she's done all of this while figuring out with the rest of us how to get school back up and running. So this was a really crazy time for the federal government to roll out a whole bunch of new guidance.
That's the first thing that occurred to me.
Yeah.
Wow. Really?
Great job, Peter.
In August?
Thank you.
Really?
Thank you.
Yep. So any other questions that board members might have for Gina?
The only question I have is on those roles, you mentioned obviously you're the Title IX coordinator. The other roles, are those individuals assigned when a case is filed, or are those people, does the investigator serve an investigator role for a certain amount of time? How are those?
So we can assign them when situations occur.
Okay.
So, and those roles can be delegated to different people, even the Title IX coordinator role, which one of our attorneys referred to as like the mother hen, oversees the entire investigation, and based on the situation, then I would delegate who's going to be the investigator. We do have kind of a flow chart for when it's a student-to-student complaint or a complaint against staff, how that would flow. But I think by cross-training people, we've made it so that we are well-equipped when and if we need to investigate when we have a complaint.
One of the things that we really have to protect against is conflict of interest and bias. So you need enough, in an organization this size, you need enough people where you could look at the individuals involved and then select who would be appropriate to work through the investigation and the process. So we were all trained to kind of fit into areas there, but could definitely move around if need be. Yeah, Zoe? Great.
So regarding filing complaints, I know that a lot of students utilize the anonymous alerts function that the district offers. So I also know that probably a lot of students wouldn't go directly to the webpage to see all of the new changes to the policy. So are you considering maybe communicating to the students the best way to maybe report something on anonymous alerts that would provide you with the best kind of information and could help them the best?
So we do communicate to students in anonymous alerts and other ways you can communicate any type of complaint. It doesn't have to be sexual harassment, it could be bullying, it could be all kinds of things, right? If an anonymous alert comes in that alludes to some kind of sexual harassment or assault or something of a sexual nature, I'm one of the individuals that's informed. At that point, then we begin the process to see if a complaint is going to be filed, if we're going to move forward with the complaint, basically where to go from there. But absolutely, anonymous alerts is a great way for students, or anyone really, it doesn't have to be students, to voice a concern.
So, like directly on the anonymous alerts, like tab or website, does it say like specifically what kinds of information would be best for you guys to utilize in helping a student?
Basically, the more information, the better. The more details and more information that you provide just gives us more information to work with. Great questions, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, great questions, right?
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well,
And then Zoe, a couple of times a year, we do send out information to all students and families. And in there is information about making these kinds of complaints and the variety of different roles that we have related to this. So that will probably go out again soon now that all of our policies have been updated and changed. We've been kind of waiting for this all to go into place before that goes out again. So a couple times a year we send that. Good questions though, Zoe. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, master facility plan. Not a ton of updates for this week, but this is kind of fun. Out in front of the building that we're in now, the drive is completed just in time for students to return. If you remember, that was always planned to go into place in somewhere in October, and it is up and going. I drove through it today. It was exciting.
Did you just keep going around?
Yeah, just in circles. It looks really cool now. The grass, a lot of the grass is in place, but this was kind of fun. I drove over there today because I went on our website and I saw one of the original artist's renderings of what this space would look like. And I went over this afternoon and tried to recreate the real photo in comparison to the one that was provided to us a few years ago. I'm not a great photographer, but there you go. The one on the left was the one that one of the pictures that was on the posters for all the flyers and brochures to show people what it could look like when it was done. And the one on the right is my terrible photograph that tried to get kind of in the same spot that rendering was drawn from. And it kind of shows you we delivered pretty close to what we laid out there from the beginning.
Well, on the left, they could control the lighting a lot better, too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I had the sun up in the corner there.
the time of year and when you could take the picture.
Yeah.
Should have been a different.
It was a nice sunny day today, which made it tough to get the angle, but you can see, it's kind of cool to see those two side by side, I thought.
Yeah.
And then over at North High, this is the chemistry lab. Remember, we have 3 multi-purpose labs that look like the 2 that are up here that are going in at North High. But we also have a dedicated chemistry lab, and those fixtures and countertops went in place over the last week. The way that third floor, or that wing will go in place, remember it's science, then CTE, career and technical ed, then the first floor is visual arts. They'll go online in that order. So third floor will be available first, and that's where the science area is, and you can see that a lot of those spaces are getting really close to being done. And then the next week, likely the week after that, CTE will come online, and then the week after that, fine arts will come online. If we stay on schedule, this third floor will be available when students return on the week of the 19th.
Awesome.
So we were always shooting for somewhere in October. We were hoping at the beginning it'd be closer to October 1st, but some of the challenges due to COVID have put us closer to October 31st to be done, but you can see some evidence of it moving along there. And then I thought I'd show you this cool picture that was taken by a drone today. Couple of pictures there of that's the common space, as the roof gets put in place, the center gets laid in. That's a metal center panel. And then everything that's open there is kind of what it'll look like, because that'll all be glass. Now that all of the metal is in place, both the support beams and the center structure, now they're measuring for all of the glass that fills all of those spaces, because they don't measure for that until everything's kind of laid out. But you can see how immense it is and how cool it's going to look once it's all in place. And on a nice sunny day like today, you can get a good appreciation for how much sunlight's going to come into that space. So that's a fun new one that nobody's seen yet. So
That is beautiful.
yeah, Sam?
We have the ability to take these photos and kind of like distribute them to the student body, right? Like that's totally okay? Okay.
Yeah, and if the newspaper's looking for more high quality than off of my, just shoot me an email, Sam, and I'll give you what I have.
Honestly, this is the kind of picture I would love to put on the Omega Instagram and like let the students know progress. So
Yep. Just shoot me an email and I'll send you a Google Drive folder
Sounds
with
good.
a bunch of stuff in it.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic.
All right, so those are some of the progress, some of the recent progress since the last time we met. All right, reception of visitors, we have none.
I don't see, has anybody sent anything in?
I'll go take a look.
It is nice to be a little more back to normal.
I don't know what normal is anymore, but
well, without so many people upset on different sides of the issue and yeah.
No, nothing through the
okay,
virtual comments either.
So that concludes the agenda, and all we need is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
That's yep, Terry and Joanna. All right. All in favor?
Nope, we have to do a roll call vote.
Do we have to?
Yeah.
What is it?
Do we have to do a roll call? No. No, okay, never mind.